gets the big one. It's what we've all been fearing. This kind of racing is going to happen.
A horrible crash on the back straightaway that began when Tony Stewart got turned sideways against the backstretch wall number 20.
God help all of them, because there's no place to go.
And it looks like everybody's going to walk away from this crash unscathed.
Tony Stewart has been absolutely destroyed by unseen forces that are tearing apart his legacy and reputation in ways that nobody could have predicted. The three-time NASCAR champion is facing his darkest hour as devastating revelations about his Daytona disasters and controversial statements are completely unraveling everything he's worked to build. What's really happening behind the scenes with Smoke is far worse than anyone imagined, and the shocking truth about his Daytona curse and recent bombshell comments is sending shockwaves through the entire motorsports world. Stewart's Daytona nightmare isn't just bad luck. It's a career-defining disaster that has haunted him for decades. Despite winning 19 times at Daytona International Speedway, Stewart is winless in 17 Daytona 500 attempts, a statistic so devastating that it's become the defining failure of an otherwise legendary career. The 2001 Daytona 500 scarred Stewart in ways that still affect him today, creating a psychological barrier that he's never been able to overcome. The horror of February 18, 2001 changed everything for Stewart. On lap 173, Stewart was involved in a spectacular 18-car crash that began when Ward Burton made contact with Robbie Gordon, sending Stewart's car flipping twice down the backstretch after being hit by Burton. Stewart's vehicle was described as something similar to Richard Petty's rollover crash in the 1988 race, a comparison that highlights just how catastrophic and life-threatening the accident was. But the real trauma came later that day when Stewart was accidentally placed in the same hospital room as Dale Earnhardt Sr. after both drivers were brought to Halifax Medical Center. Stewart recalled the heartbreaking moment when they accidentally rolled me in the same room he was in, so I had already been there, they had done all the scans on me, and they went to put me back in a room, and they had already put Dale in the same room. They accidentally put me in there, and I was only in there a second, but I knew when I saw Dale it wasn't good. This traumatic experience of witnessing Dale Earnhardt's final moments has clearly damaged Stewart psychologically. The fact that he was one of the few who saw the 7-time champion battling for his life has created a permanent scar that connects his own Daytona failures with the sport's darkest day. Stewart's inability to win the Daytona 500 isn't just bad luck, it's a psychological block rooted in trauma. Stewart's Daytona curse continued year after year, with each failure adding to his mounting frustration. In 2013, Stewart admitted his heartbreak, saying, "If I told you I wasn't heartbroken, I'd be lying to you," after another crash relegated him to a 41st place finish. The pattern was always the same. Stewart would show speed, lead laps, and then watch victory slip away due to crashes, mechanical failures, or strategic mistakes. Now Stewart has delivered the most controversial and devastating commentary about the Daytona 500 that has completely destroyed his standing with NASCAR fans. On the Rubbin is Racing podcast, Stewart unleashed a brutal assessment.
When it comes to Daytona now, and man, I mean, I'm going to get crucified by a lot of people for this. In my eyes, it doesn't mean the same now as it did 15, 20 years ago. Anybody can win.
Stewart's comments got even more savage as he attacked previous Daytona 500 winners. I mean, you look at some of the guys that won the Daytona 500. I don't want to go into the list of guys because they're guys that I do respect and have friendships with, but they're not guys that should have won the Daytona 500, and they've won the Daytona 500, and that's all they've won. This statement is absolutely devastating because Stewart is essentially calling out Daytona 500 champions as undeserving winners, while simultaneously admitting that his own failure to win the race haunts him. Stewart revealed his desperation.
So to me, as much as it's a crown jewel, I wouldn't trade a championship for 3 Daytona 500 trophies. Even though I don't feel like it carries as much weight as it used to, it still carries the weight because it's still the Daytona 500. It is still the marquee event on the NASCAR schedule. It still has that rich history.
What makes Stewart's meltdown even more tragic is his admission that the current format has made the race meaningless. Stewart explained, The cars have got so equal, and you look at guys that are winning some of these. They're not the ones that led the most laps. They're not the ones that were up front. They were the guy that was second or third or fourth when the last lap crash happened and NASCAR hit the button to freeze the field. This comment reveals Stewart's bitter resentment toward modern NASCAR and his belief that his own failures were due to bad timing rather than lack of skill. He's essentially arguing that worthy drivers like himself can't win because NASCAR's current format rewards luck over talent, a desperate rationalization from someone who can't accept his own shortcomings. Stewart has been forced to watch from the sidelines as Fox Sports has assembled their Indy 500 broadcast team for 2025. Stewart, the 1997 IndyCar champion, has joined Fox's coverage alongside Danica Patrick and Chris Myers for their first Indianapolis 500 broadcast. While this should be a prestigious opportunity, it instead highlights how Stewart has been relegated to broadcasting rather than competing at the highest levels. Stewart's transition to broadcasting feels like a man trying to stay relevant in a sport that has moved on without him. His controversial Daytona 500 comments suggest someone who is bitter about his failures and desperate to diminish the accomplishments of others to make himself feel better. Instead of graciously accepting his shortcomings, Stewart is attacking the very race that defined his greatest failure. What's really happening with Tony Stewart is a complete breakdown of his legacy as traumatic memories from 2001, decades of Daytona failures, and mounting bitterness have created a perfect storm of controversy. His inability to win NASCAR's biggest race has consumed him to the point where he's willing to attack the very event that represents everything he couldn't achieve. The unseen disaster destroying Tony Stewart isn't visible crashes or mechanical failures. It's the psychological damage from 24 years of Daytona defeats that has turned him bitter and resentful. Tony Stewart's fall from racing legend to bitter commentator represents one of motorsport's most tragic career collapses. What do you think about Stewart's controversial Daytona 500 comments? Is he right about the race's diminished importance, or is this just sour grapes from a driver who couldn't win NASCAR's biggest prize? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you think Stewart is out of line, and subscribe for more explosive NASCAR drama and behind-the-scenes revelations.